Enjoy a little bit of indoor fishing. My name is Troy Becker. I am aka Fishslim on Ohio Game Fish if you're on there. And this is a Saugeye seminar. How many out there in the audience today are Saugeye addicts? Show of hands. Okay, we got some. How many in the audience have never caught a Saugeye, or maybe just one or two? Okay, Well, what we're going to try to do is show you some techniques that will help either feed your addiction or maybe start a new addiction for you about Saugeye. I really appreciate the ODNR. When I was a young man, they started introducing Saugeye to our waters and our rivers. I immediately started fishing for them, and after I caught my first couple, I knew this is a fish I wanted to chase as long as they were around. They are very addictive because you think you have them patterned or figured out, and they'll change in a heartbeat. It's a challenge. Start with, what I love to do is I love to use a spinning reel. About 80% of my fishing is going to be with a jig. For about the last 5 years, I've been really studying Saugeyes and how they love swim baits. And I found that swim baits not only catch Saugeyes, but pretty much everything loves a swim bait. So what we've been doing in that process is I've been using these different techniques all the way through the year. What we're going to do is we're going to start out about the spring aspect. After the spawn, we're going to start there. We'll work our way and see how far we can get on some things. As you can see, bass really love it. We got fortunate aspect of us Ohio fishermen. We have rivers. We have two type lakes out there, a shallow body lake and a deeper lake such as Allen Creek and Hoover. So I'm going to keep giving you some comparisons. I'll try not to blend that and confuse you, but it's a little different about how a shallow lake works and a deeper lake. Let's start out with the shallower lake. The reason I say that is because as soon as ice is off, we want to go fishing, right? We want to get going. So where would be the first places we want to do that at? Well, it's going to be at the places that are going to warm up the quickest. It's going to be our rivers. It's going to be our shallow lakes like Buckeye and like Indian Lake. So as soon as that ice is off and they're warming up, I've found that the Saugeyes over at Indian Lake will start heading towards the bays. They'll start heading towards the harbors. They'll start heading towards, if you're an Indian Lake person, you'll understand the south bank, the rocky areas of the main lake. So what you as a fisherman want to do is be ready and able, I mean tanking me up, ready and able to be at those spots. You want to be adaptive. You want to go where your percentages are the best. Typically where that's going to be is these shallow lakes and rivers. Now I have a theory, if I can get this undone. I have a theory about Saugeyes. I don't have a study on this, but in my opinion, there's two forms or two types of Saugeyes. You have the ones that act like the walleye, and you have the ones that act like a blind man. That act like a sauger. There we go, we're getting there now. We're getting there. The sauger, and what I want to do is make your tendencies of a higher percentage of catching fish. I am going to be talking shallow this whole seminar. I don't care if it's 90 degrees in the middle of the summer, we're still going to be talking. I want you to always remember, I'm talking shallow. I don't care if it's a deep lake or shallow lake. Because those ones that act like saugers, they love current. They love turbid water. They love cold water. They love to eat. So that 70% that love to go shallow and stay shallow is what I target. Now there are times when I'll go for that 30% that acts more like the walleye that's deeper in Allen Creek. Early spring, you might do some blade baiting down towards the dam areas and deeper water with the females getting ready to spawn. But I want to up your percentages. So now it's springtime. You're at Indian Lake. I mentioned the harbors, the shores. These are the places where these fish, these Saugeyes, are going to congregate to. And after they get done with their spawn, they're not going to leave there if there's bait and things there for them to keep going. And typically they're going to stay. in those harbors, because when they're done with their spawn, what happens? The crappies and the other fish come in there and start spawning as well. Also, you're going to find that the wind will be a key at this time. Follow the wind in your shallow lakes like Buckeye and like Indian. If you're in one of the harbors over like Lakeview Harbor and the wind's pushing in, and it's pushed in there for at least a day, you're going to find me in the afternoon or middle day if I can get off work in time. I'm going to be fishing a swim bait or a jig or a rattle trap or a pulse bait. All right, come on, where'd we do? All right, not that troll motor, that's just a mean, hungry fish. I'm going to be using those baits in that shallow water. I'm going to first start out, I'm going to look to the windiest side, and I'm going to get on that side, and if I have to put rain gear on to keep me dry from the wave, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to parallel, tighten that shoreline of rocks. I'm going to use that swim jig, or the jig, or trap, whatever, and I'm going to parallel it tight first, and then start fanning out away from the rocks. Typically, you're going to find that a lot of those larger fish are going to be really tight to those rocks in the bays and harbors of Indian, but they're also going to be that way out on the south bank or the west bank, anywhere there's rock. Delaware or Buckeye would be the same aspect. So that's a key thing to be looking at early spring at Indian and Buckeye. But now Allen Creek, it's a different bait, and I'll be honest with you, I really don't fish Allen Creek till a lot of times till it's getting into April, late April, mid-April, just because I'm having so much fun with the shallower lakes where the fish are busy. But about the time they start to slow down a little bit, Buckeye and Indian from that early bite, now Indian lakes or Allen Creek and Hoover, their temperatures are coming up. So now those fish are in the same pattern that what was happening in the shallow lakes, just different places. Those different places that you want to look at are the bigger bays, coves, flats that come up deep water. They will come in at 1 to 6 to 8 foot where they can roam and constant. Now those deeper walleye type saugeyes, they're gonna come up in the evenings and on those points and eat as well. But I want to get you to go back into the bays and the shallows. And I want you to position your boat if you're in a boat to where you're about 7 foot of water to 8 foot, and you're in casting range basically of the shore. And I want you to hit it up to that shore, and I want you to use that jig and tail or the trap bait. You can even use some crankbaits at this time, but typically I'm using the jig. And you use that and you start pitching that and working it back to you slowly. You just do it steady reeling at first, but they won't let me, these fish just won't let me even show you. But the reason you want to do that is you're going to first try to find the ones that are cruising so you can trigger. Those are trigger fish. The ones that are active. If you find one, you're typically going to find a few more on that same stretch of area. Key things to do. Don't just worry about your pole and what you're hitting at. You want to visually be watching the water, watching the shoreline. How many out there, when you're in the back of the bays in the springtime, you notice little minnows skipping and darting out of the water along the shore? If you're seeing that happen, you're in a great place. Because saugeyes, bass, crappies, they all love those minnows. And I found that like lakes like Allen Creek, that you can stay in those bays, in those shallow flats, as long as those minnows are doing that activity, you will catch saugeyes. But if you're using a jig and a tail or a swim bait, it's great because you're not only going to catch saugeye, you're going to load up with some nice crappies and different things like that as well. The other aspect that you want to think about then is maybe you pattern these bigger shore and you found some saugeyes, you go back the next day and what happens in the great state of Ohio? What was beautiful the next day is trash. The wind's howling, everything's changing. Now typically, the reason I'm saying about going back in these bays is because the fish are coming in there to start spawn. You're going to want to go back in there to fish them. But what happens when the pressure changes with crappies? These bays, they tend to want to pull away from the shoreline. And if you're in a bay, it has a creek channel, they're going to pull into that deeper water of it. Well, in most of these bays, that area is going to be maybe 6 to 10 feet. So now I want you to back off, start working that middle section and start searching for the saugeyes there. If they're not there, A key thing I found is to go out of those bays and go towards your next closest points or flats that drop into a deeper area. And if you have wind pushing across that point, take your boat, you can either drift, take your jig and just put it out there far enough, get a drift of your boat to where it's ticking as you go across the point of that, of the top of that point. Typically what you're going to find is those saugeyes are going to load up on the back side of that drop, watching things getting pushed across, letting the wind be their friend. So that's some typical things that you can find and use that I do a lot of. Also and this pattern works for mid-June typically, about the water when it gets in the 70s. When those little skipping minnows I told you about disappeared, then it's time to start pulling out. Start going to the points, into the little deeper flats, into what I call my deeper water. I go out and start fishing that 6 to 10, maybe 12-foot range on those flats. Now the same thing at Indian Lake. You're out of the spawn, you're into more of a pattern of where now the fish are just out there looking for things to eat. Again, I'm going to stress, and I can't stress enough, that what you want to do is let the wind be your friend. Follow the wind. I have what I call at Indian Lake a milk run. Develop a milk run on any lake you fish. If you pick out 5 or 6 spots that you either see locals or you see people catch fish, or that you think are good, and then start it with the one you think's the best. You got a strong winded Indian coming from the south, southwest, I'll just tell you right now, I'm going to stop at Oakville Channel. I'm not going to be the only one stopping there, but I'm going to also check the loading under the bridge. I'm going to look for pitches, anything that helps create more of a current. Sawguys love current, especially at Buckeye and at Indian Lake. When you can find a channel that has a hard wave push coming into it, if you watch and you look, you're going to see not only a flow coming this way, you're going to see a backflow. If you find those areas with that backflow, I don't care if it's right there and you can stand on top of it. You want to put a jig straight down to the bottom or a pulse blade bait, whatever you're using, and you want to work that. Give it about 10 or 15 minutes. If nothing's happening, then I'm going to move to my next spot. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to give each spot unless I start catching fish. Never leave fish if you're catching them. I've seen guys do this, they go, I'll come back. Sawguys eat. When they decide to eat, they're proficient eaters. That might be a 5-minute bite. It might be a half hour, depending on the amounts there. But if there's only 2 or 3 fish there, and you catch one, fish it for a bit, because when they're done eating, they'll be like these bass, but they'll sit on the bottom, and they won't. You can put everything you want there, and they won't touch it. It's hard to trigger them. But the minute they feel like it's time to eat, they eat, and they get done quick. Same with over at Allen Creek. Let's go in a little farther with Allen Creek. Midsummer aspect. I've told you about wanting to have currents and wanting wind. How many fish the weekend at Allen Creek? You try not to, but you have to, right? Well, instead of just cussing at all those pleasure boaters, which we all do, and I do it too, they actually can become your friend. They are creating a secondary mud line along the shorelines. Have you ever fished those mud lines? Saugeye love to roam those mud lines. They will roam them up and down and dart in and out and bag fish that are coming through. They'll also love on the points. When all our great skiers and pleasure boats go by, they're going to wait for that boat to go by, and it's creating waves and it's creating current. There's your current that I'm talking about. Sawguys will be laying on the bottom. The minute that current starts, they're not on the bottom anymore. They're coming up, they're looking for free and easy food. I am not kidding you when I say this, it works. Bass will do the same thing, but saugeye are not dumb. If something can make it easy for them to eat, they're going to do it. Midsummer when it's super hot, this is even better. I'm going to give you something, and I really have never told a lot of people about this. How many people here fish Indian Lake and say mid-July, August? It's 95 degrees. You're out there. Are you trolling or are you fishing the channels? What are you doing? Most of the guys I see are waving at me. They're going out to troll the main lake. I'm waving right back. But you know what happens when they go by? I give a little snicker. I throw my bait out like that. I count to about 2 and I just start steady reeling. You know what happens? Wham! And I'm not talking just small sawguys. I'm talking 5 and 6 pound sawguys. Last year, it was mid-August. I called Josh, who was testing a new color, a glow perch, the newer version. It was 97 degrees out. The water temperature when a bass fisherman went by told me it was 92. I'm in a channel with 2.5 to 3 foot max water. Why in the world would a sawguy be there? It's called a shad hatch. Again, use your eyes. Find those channels where shad have hatched, typically where they hatch, and I found this to be true, and it's probably the same with buckeye, they will stay in those channels. So what becomes your friend again to a sawguy? A boat goes by. It disorients those shad, and when it disorients them, they're down there sitting there on the bottom. But the minute that boat goes by, those shads they come up and pick 2 or 3 off and go right back to the bottom. Now I caught 17 sawguys in an hour and a half from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the afternoon in mid